give it like another minute and then get started. I just want to thank everyone for coming to the event. Thank you to all our speakers for joining us today. We're really excited to hear your presentations, but we'll give it like 1 or 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, awesome. Let's get started. We'll do a quick introduction before getting into our speakers. So I'll quick present my slide. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So welcome everyone, good evening. Welcome to the McMaster Engineering Society's National Engineering Month session in collaboration with the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. This is the event Beyond the B.Eng. We will begin our event tonight with a panel discussion followed by a Q&A with our panelists. And please note that this session will also be recorded as well. So we'll start off by quickly introducing our host for the event. My name is Kira White and I'm the VP External of the McMaster Engineering Society.
And I'm Vedashri, and I'm one of the Internal Affairs Coordinators. We have 2 other Internal Affairs Coordinators, Vaishnavi and Kemi, and they'll be joining us shortly.
So I want to get started with a land acknowledgement. So that we all gathered in different locations, we would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which our school, McMaster University, stands on is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. The territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. The wampum uses a symbolism of a dish to represent the territory and one spoon to represent that the people are to share the resources of the land and only take what they need. It is important for us to reflect on the history we are part of as members of this university. As engineers, we have a role in society to continue to push for change and innovation, but ensure that the work we do is equitable and fair for all people.
This session will be a total of 2 hours with the panel discussion and Q&A until 7:15, which will be followed by our student project showcase until 8 p.m. So to provide some more insight, this session will provide information highlighting the various pathways you can take after graduating with your bachelor's in engineering. The panel discussion consists of the following panelists: Marissa Sterling, Fuad Ali, Michael Jobidi, and Genevieve Conant. So without further ado, we would now like to begin the session. We ask that everyone mute themselves while the panelists are introducing themselves, but feel free to ask your questions by either using the raise your hand feature on Zoom and unmuting your microphone, or dropping your questions in the chat once the Q&A portion has begun. First off, we have Marissa Sterling, who is a distinguished engineer and academic administrator who has over 20 years of experience working and volunteering in the engineering field. She has served as the elected president of the Professional Engineers of Ontario, also known as the PO. She is currently the Assistant Dean and Director of Diversity, Inclusion, and Professionalism at the University of Toronto's Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering. So please welcome Marissa.
Hi, everybody. Did you want me to say something now or wait for the panel?
Yeah, it's your time to talk about your career and yourself.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. No problem. Yeah, so hi, everybody. So great to be here. Welcome, McMaster engineering students, friends and colleagues. Yeah, it's just a real honor. Certainly, I have a lot of praise for McMaster. It's a wonderful engineering school, and great people have come from the school as well. So I know you've got this phenomenal background. So you're here tonight to talk about what kind of comes next in the career. And so I'm happy to help you with that thinking. I can just share with you that my career has not been straight. It's gone in all kinds of directions. And I think that's kind of an exciting thing that's possible within an engineering background. We're problem solvers. We're people who think, who can see a system and can figure out all the different moving parts of it and can really help to break down issues to find the key problems and be able to solution them. And this allows us to do all kinds of different positions. And so just as a framing for the discussion tonight, I can share with you that my career began in research and development. And so I worked in a lab, I worked in a manufacturing facility, I made products, I made consumer products, I made drug products, and formulated them, filed for a patent, you know, did some really great stuff in the area of chemical engineering, which is my educational background. And then I found that I had opportunities to get into the purchasing of chemicals, for example. I started to learn some sales functions. I ended up going into retailers to sell products and help them to manage the efficiency of the delivery of their products, for example, just-in-time kind of delivery processes. And at that point, I had a meeting with a sales executive who sort of said, never had an engineer in sales before, and you know, a little kind of perplexed. They did like a math test with me, which I think I got 100%. And then they thought, okay, well, you got the math skills. And then they thought, well, this is quite different than what we're used to, but let's give it a go. And it was a real positive eye opener for all of us in terms of the way that engineers are trained to think. Was actually highly valuable in a sales function. And then my career took a little bit of a turn where I got interested in regulation and government and worked to make some policies around workplace, manufacturing workplace safety, which has been helpful for the Ontario government to kind of advance in that area. So that's been super exciting to learn about all the laws around us and how important they are that we know a little bit of this stuff as engineers. And then has had a chance now to get to what I've discovered is one of my core passions, which is advocating for those who don't have a voice and trying to seek equity in our society. And so from this story, what I'd like to just share with you, all of you, is just 2 points overall. One is that many of us are multifaceted individuals and we have all kinds of interests, and historical engineering programming has kind of forced us to, you know, really get into the math and the science and become experts in that. And more modern engineering education allows us to be our whole self. We're musicians, we're artists, we're writers, and we're engineers. So we do all kinds of things. So my thoughts for all of you is really try to get true to the passions of what you love, and then find a great intersection of that love with engineering, and then find ways to pursue that. And it will likely change over your whole career, and that's normal. So just keep moving with it. But certainly foundationally valuable for me, I found, was the license, the Png designation, because when I got that right after university, it allowed everyone that I went to seek employment with to see me as having certain standards that they could trust, and a reputable designation that they really respected. Whether or not the work was engineering or not, it carried a lot of value. So I have found that Png has actually opened doors for me in my career, even if the job wasn't really a true engineering position. So I'll leave it at that, and I look forward to the dialogue tonight. Thank you.
All right, so next up we have Fuad Ali. So Fuad actually graduated with a B.Eng from McMaster University, and he's done a variety of co-ops from all around the world. He's done a co-op at SpaceX, Twitter, as well as Tesla, and he's actually now a software engineer at Twitter. So he'll just be touching a little bit about that. So I'll pass it over to Fuad.
Hey, Fuad, sorry, I think we're unable to hear you.
We can't hear you now, no.
How about now? Can you guys hear me now?
You're good now.
Good.
Okay, let me rewind a little bit and then go back. Hi everyone, sorry for the mix-up. I'm really excited to talk to you all today. I haven't had as much experience as some of our distinguished panelists today, since I just graduated last year in May. So hopefully I can kind of tailor this experience a little bit more towards the students in terms of co-op and my early career journey so far, I guess. So yeah, here's a quick overview of the presentation I'll be giving. Who am I? My co-op journey and teleprogression. It's kind of centered around the theme of like, starting small and like building blocks from there. I'll talk a little bit about my work at Tesla, Twitter, and SpaceX, and some of my future plans, and then some reflections and just things I've learned along the way. And then finally, Q&A, I guess, will be at the end, correct? So yeah, I don't have too much time because I messed that up. So I will go through it quick. Who am I? My name is Fuad. I'm from Toronto, originally from Scarborough. I studied McMaster's Electrical and Biomedical Engineering program. It's kind of like the grandpa of the iBiomed program. I was the last year of that, and then they started iBiomed the next year. So what do I do right now? I'm a software engineer at Twitter, San Francisco, and I'll talk a little bit about what I worked on or what I work on there. It's similar to what I worked on during my internship. I also interned at Walsimple, Tesla, Twitter, SpaceX, and the CIA. A bunch of companies. I basically took a year off between third and fourth year and just did a ton of internships. So yeah, it was really, really fun and super formative. So if anyone's like looking to do that or anything, highly recommend that. And then my spare time, I used to play a lot of rugby before COVID, and then COVID kind of ruined that. So I got into running and weightlifting. I read a lot, and I also host my own podcast, which I can talk about later. So my co-op journey is pretty much a tale of progression. I started off in research, specifically at the multi-organ transplant program at Toronto General Hospital. I love research, and I was pretty set on doing biomed, but I realized eventually that that's not what I wanted to do. And so I went to a ton of different hackathons and kind of got exposure to the tech world. Delta Hacks, which McMaster hosts, Hack Harvard, Y Hacks, Hack the Valley at U of T, ton of different hackathons, and that kind of exposed me to the world of technology. And so I was like, okay, I got it. I'm going to apply for software engineering internships. This is going to be great, and I'll find out what I want to do. And it didn't really go like that. Actually, the first year I applied to over like 300 companies, and I got rejected from every single one. Ended up working at a startup incubated at the Forge at McMaster, but it was like an unpaid position, so I had to like work like a retail job on the side that summer. So it was like, not ideal, but the theme of this co-op journey is the tale progression. And I went from 300 applications in second year to, in my fourth and final year, 2 applications to SpaceX and one other company, and only 1 rejection and 1 offer. So as you can see, like the funnel does get a little bit easier. I talked a bit of my co-ops, but I want to jump into some of my experiences. So one of my most notable experiences was when I worked at Tesla. I was a software engineer intern on the Tesla energy team. So I worked on stuff like Powerwall, Megapack, and Solar Roof, which are sort of Tesla's like hardware suite for industrial engineering and energy applications. And so that was really, really cool, kind of like the future of like what energy should look like in an ideal world, and having everything solar. That was a really, really cool experience because, with my internships, what I really wanted to do was like explore a bunch of different sectors. So I was like, okay, I have no idea what I want to do, but I know that I'm interested in clean energy. I'm interested in space exploration. I'm interested in like finance. So why don't I like try and get an internship in each field, and then like after that, I'll have enough information to make a decision. And so that's kind of what I did, and really, really enjoyed my experience at Tesla. Next up is Twitter. So Twitter is where I currently work as well. I was a software engineering intern on the health organization. So it was actually a great summer to intern because it was like 2020 summer when Trump got banned. So I was actually in the Zoom call for a bunch of those conversations, which is really interesting. Our team basically gets rid of the bad stuff on Twitter. So we censor hate speech, abusive content, child pornography, the ugly side of the internet. And I think it's a really interesting intersection between sort of like ethics, philosophy, technology, and like machine learning. So it was a really fun time because Twitter is also like a lot more chill than companies like Tesla and SpaceX. So I got to like meet a lot of people. I even got to do like a panel event with Jack Dorsey, who's like a very, very cool person. He's no longer the CEO of Twitter as of like a couple of months ago, but yeah, that was super cool. Yeah, so that was my time at Twitter, and that's also the team I currently worked at. I liked it so much I decided to come back in San Francisco. And yeah, happy to answer questions about that. And then after I graduated, I was at SpaceX for 4 months, just to like kind of try it out before I went back to Twitter. And I was a software engineer on the Mars program, so that was in Texas. That was super, super fun. Wait, let me admit somebody's in the waiting room. That was super, super fun because it was kind of like the pinnacle of engineering at the time. It was like we're working on sort of like the next frontier or like the final frontier, or whatever you want to call it. I was a lot of real-time systems work, factory work, and I worked a little bit on like future Mars rover prototypes. And so that was a very educational experience, both on like the technology side, but also on like time management and life priorities. SpaceX work is super, super hard. And I think it was a great lesson in, kind of like what you want to take out of life, how much time you want to dedicate to work, and how you kind of find that balance. And so I would say that's like probably the biggest takeaway from my time at SpaceX. So what are my future plans? Right now, I'm going to continue at Twitter. I really enjoy my role. I feel like I have a lot of impact, especially with things like Ukraine happening right now. My team works directly on all those issues. So I really feel like I'm aligning myself with like sort of my personal life philosophy and like what I want to see in the world, as well as like my engineering work. And it's a great way to hone my engineering skills as well. There's a lot of talent at Twitter, and so I'm learning from them. I was just admitted to Columbia Business School for the class of 2025. So I'm going to be going there in a year to do my MBA. And the reason behind this is sort of just like exploring the intersection of tech and business and getting to a point in my career where I think I can use more of the skills that I have naturally, other than, sort of like the analytical stuff. And as was mentioned before, what's great about engineering is that it's so applicable to a ton of different things. And especially in business, I think that logical and analytic mindset really allows you to, kind of shine. And yeah, I guess my biggest future plan is just kind of finding a balance in work and life, just like understanding who I am as a person and like what I want to get out of life. And that brings me to the next slide, reflections and regrets. This is just sort of like a collection of like lessons I've learned, and like I try to relate to students if I ever talk to them, because I remember like being super, super confused and going to a ton of different events run by Macintosh Society and like, oh, like these people are so far ahead of me, like how do I relate to them? And so this is like my one relatable bit. First off, enjoy living a 5-minute walk with your friends while you can. It's way, way harder to catch up and like, chill with people when you live 3 time zones away. So that's super important. I would recommend everyone take advantage of that. Life isn't about accolades, it's about memory. So understand that like co-op and careers are really, really valuable. But if you're doing that at the expense of like your quality of life, that's like not okay. And you should realize how to, kind of fit that into your life in a way that works for you. And it's not the same for everyone. This is a quote I made up like a couple weeks ago, but you can't connect the dots until you have some. I think this is really, really important because I think everyone looks at these people like super far ahead in their career and they're like, oh, it seems so obvious that you went from here to here to here, and that was like the next logical progression. But that's actually not the case. I had no idea what was going to happen next. Even like in January during my Tesla term, I started Twitter like in May, and I didn't even know I'd have the offer until like February. So it was like very much like a last minute thing. So I would suggest like just collect as many dots as you have, and then you can start connecting them once you have some. But if you haven't done anything, it's really hard to like figure out like what the next thing you want to do is. So yeah, that's some Fuad advice. You have time for everything. Make time for what you actually care about. So one thing I stopped doing is saying like, oh, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. You do have time for it. You're just choosing not to do it because you're prioritizing something else more. And so once you like rephrase things like that, I think it helps a lot. Like, oh, I don't have time for the gym today. No, I have time for the gym. I'm just choosing to work, or I'm choosing to do this instead. And And the last one is everyone you meet might matter. There's been so many people that I might have thought would never matter in my life or I'd never see again, but have like been super, super impactful, or have like led me to my next opportunity, or just been really good friends. And so yeah, treat everyone like they matter, and like they might be like someone really impactful in your life, and that'll take you far. And that's all. I might be a bit over time, so I will end now. But excited to hear the other panelists and answer some questions later.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your presentation. That was great. Oh, I will share my screen again. So. Okay, perfect. So time for our next panelist. We have Michael. Michael is the president of Tunify, which is a technology company behind the award-winning robotic guitar tuning stand, and they're now building the world's largest robotic ecosystem of portable robotics in STEM and education. He was internationally recognized as a top talent under 25 and has also appeared on Dragon's Den, which is really cool. So excited to hear about your experience on the show. And he also started this company with the Forge at McMaster. So if any of you guys are familiar with that. So yeah, looking forward to hearing your experience on entrepreneurship. So I'll let you take the floor.
Awesome. Thanks, Kira. And yeah, thank you again for having me. Super excited to be here today. Already getting a lot of inspiration from the speakers so far, like just really exciting stories and journeys. So just really, really inspiring. Awesome. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yep, you're good.
Yeah, thumbs up. Awesome. Yeah, so nice to meet everyone. Hope you're doing well, having a great Monday. Happy Monday. So yeah, basically I graduated 2 years ago in 2020. So I graduated virtually, but I literally just found out today that apparently there's going to be a makeup in-person graduation. So I'm super excited about that. But yeah, I studied engineering, physics, and management during my undergrad at McMaster University, and just really excited about the future. I'm a nerd for like jetpacks, hoverboards, like classic Back to the Future style. And yeah, just really excited about the future, innovation, and passion. And I really liked what Marissa said previously, as well as Fuad, looking at kind of linking your passion with your future and like the career that you want to build and ensuring that you're making an impact. So throughout my undergrad, I worked at Airbus. So I flew over to England and actually worked there for a year in Bristol as well as Broughton. So Broughton's actually in Wales, Bristol is in England. So I worked in commercial, like the commercial space, as well as military and additive manufacturing. And within that plethora of fields, I worked in like Industry 4.0, which is basically a combination of new technologies in the production space, using things like mixed reality, blockchain even, which is obviously like booming right now in terms of technology, as well as like Internet of Things, robotics on the shop floor to like link that with lean methodologies to improve your production line. So yeah, basically was fortunate to work in military, commercial, and additive manufacturing. And then I flew back to Canada. And similar to what a few had mentioned previously, I actually have a podcast as well. And this was a screenshot of one of the guests I have. So basically I have guests who are passionate about different things, and we talk about how they bring their passion to a new level. So here we have Bob Burgin, who's the voice actor of the Looney Tunes. So he does like Porky Pig, Tweety Bird. He was in the new Space Jam movie, and he was telling me from a young age, like he knew he wanted to be a voice actor, which is obviously super specific. And the common theme I find with all these different guests is that they're very persistent, which is a trait that I think lends itself well to success, because persistence overcomes resistance. But yeah, that was a really cool talk and learning about his experience. And he did the voice as well. I thought he'd be annoyed, but he loves it. He does that full time, right? But anyways, yeah, after I came back to university, obviously there's the Capstone Project, which is, the big project everyone talks about for engineering, being able to develop a product and actually solve a problem at the end of the day. So instead of doing something traditional, like, designing a plant, for instance, or something typical within engineering physics, we said, how about we build like a consumer product that links the music space with new technologies like robotics. So we thought of the idea of building a hands-free robotic guitar tuning stand. So kind of like Tony Stark style, the robotic arms, as you can see here, actually latch onto the pegs of the tuning of the guitar, essentially. Then we have a computer vision module that takes snapshots of the headstock and is able to identify tuning pegs in 3D space. We actually train the system using Google Colab, and it basically strums the guitar for you as well. So it's fully hands-free. And we actually patented it as well. So filing patents, utility patents, design patents, something that I learned and if anyone ever has any questions about IP and how to protect yourself, definitely a really interesting space, especially on the technical end too. It's almost like reports that you would write, but for a specific application. Just jumping back here, similar to yourselves, we started with Capstone and then started going to different competitions like the McMaster Engineering Competition, the Ontario Engineering Competition, and then started to turn into a business. So like we incorporated, we joined the Forge, we started meeting with different stakeholders. So in these two areas here, this is a recording studio, and at the bottom here is a recording label, actually. So we met with different stakeholders who eventually became our customers. And the record label here is called Wolf Island Records. And just a very quick story, I didn't realize it was actually an island. So I said, yeah, we'll meet up on Monday. And then on Sunday night, I realized it's actually an island in Toronto. And I had to basically bring the tuning stand in my car in the trunk and then take a ferry over to the island and then try to find this record label. But it all worked out, but kind of like a classic startup story. And then we went on to Dragon's Den in 2020. So this is what it looks like here in terms of the actual mock-up of the tuner, and it's available on our website. So yeah, we went on to Dragon's Den. So myself, and this is my co-founder, Mitchell, we auditioned in, I guess like February, March of 2020. And then we're fortunate to find out in April that we're on the show. So in the whole summer, we were like preparing. I watched like 100 different episodes. I didn't want to be that company that, gave a wrong valuation. So we hired a CPA to support and help us go through our financial models. So it was a really great kind of, crash course into what a business entails, like the financial modeling, the projections, valuation, your team, what your mission statement is. And we actually did a really good job. So we prepped really well, and it was a very positive experience. At the time, it was, Michelle Romano, Manjeet, Lane Merrifield, who created Club Penguin. I didn't even know Club Penguin was made in Canada. That's pretty cool. Jim Trevelling as well, who, Boston Pizza. And yeah, by the way, I'm wearing a wig here. I'm very aware of that. Mitchell was wearing a wig too. We had a little skit at the beginning where we were part of a rock band, and then we asked one of the Dragons to come down and tune his guitar. He gets flustered, and then he eventually smashes the guitar because it's entertainment. And then we reveal our tuner and have it tuned autonomously. But altogether, in terms of key resources, obviously the engineering physics department gave us the lab space to help and test and build our robotics. The Forge is really helpful in connecting us with manufacturing institutions, as well as IP and law firms to file our patents. Worked with the DeGroote School of Business, for pitch coaching, as well as mentorship and valuation strategy. We actually traveled to the facility in Burlington. And yeah, and then also the engineering faculty for competitions and additional support. But yeah, we also have a secondary product line where we sell portable robotics to the education sector. This was something that popped up during the sales of the tuner when we were putting them into music schools. Naturally, the science classes were looking and what is this? This doesn't look traditional. And then we started getting a lot of inquiries to analyze the arms. So we created a secondary product line. And apparently there's a huge gap actually in Canada right now to teach younger students to code. So we're currently tackling that market with affordable robotics to teach students how to use Python and robotics at an early age, all the way from JK to university. So we've had Capstones license our robotic arms to help with different applications. And they come in different colors too. But yeah, ultimately, I think in terms of key elements that I've learned, working in a team, being able to connect and liaise with your stakeholders. And even when you're just starting, you have to have the mindset that you are a big company. I think that comes across in terms of confidence. At the end of the day, people are people. And if you can build a relationship and kind of convey that positive message of how you want to make a positive impact, it definitely comes across and people are more willing to help and support you. So we work very closely with, universities, STEM institutions, companies. And yeah, this is just an overview of some of our recent milestones. We're starting to get into the Arizona area. So working with the Arizona State University, we have some PhD students that are working with us, and we're starting to actually branch into their education sector and elementary schools and high schools. And yeah, I've been fortunate to do a bunch of different expos and events But I won't spend too much time going into that because I'm just, wary of the time. But altogether, just really passionate about the future, new technologies, and how you can use tech to inspire people, right? Because, if I'm a small kid and I see someone on a jetpack, that's going to inspire me to make a difference. So I think it's important to understand what that passion is, as the previous speakers have said, and look at a way where you can innovate, work with the team, and honestly, like starting your own projects is a great way to build up experience as well if you want to kind of create relevant opportunities and experiences on your portfolio. So that would be a great piece of advice from myself, but I'll leave it there. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, but hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much. And up next, we have Genevieve Conant. Jenna finished her degrees in chemical engineering and bioengineering at Mac. She has a passion for commercialization of medical technologies, which led to her working as a researcher in the medical device and pharmaceutical industry. So please welcome Genevieve.
Hello, everyone. All right, I'm going to apologize. I don't usually. Okay, there's a share screen button. All right, let me figure this out. All righty. Can you guys all see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So,
You're
hi,
good.
everyone. My name's Genevieve, or you can call me Jenna. Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to come back and speak to all of you. McMaster Engineering was a huge part of my life and a big part of making me who I am today. So I'm so glad to be back here and hopefully answer any questions you guys might have. So a little bit about me. Like I said, my name is Jenna. I graduated from McMaster Engineering in 2014 with my bachelor's in chemical and bioengineering, and then I have a master's degree in chemical and biomedical engineering from the University of Toronto. I'm a researcher. That's what I do. I live in a lab. I love R&D. Besides my science work, though, I'm also a rock climber. I love musical theater. I like to crochet. My dog is my child. I love my dog. And fun fact, I have never had a cup of coffee in my life. So a little tidbit for you. So kind of like the other speakers, I wanted to give you guys an overview of my time at Mac and then post-Mac and my career progression and what led me to where I am today. So when I first started at Mac, I was actually in life sciences. I was not in the Department of Engineering. And after about a week of life sciences, I said, nope, I want to be an engineer. So I hustled and worked my tuchus off. And by by my second year, I had switched into the full engineering department. So I graduated from the B.Eng Biosci program in 2014. When I was there, I did the 4Y thesis project, which I think still exists. And I did the wastewater treatment capstone, which was one of the options for us. But I was never really interested in kind of wastewater. I was more interested in the biomedical engineering side of things. While I was there, I was also very involved in various extracurricular activities, I guess you would call it. So I was a member and the director of the McMaster Engineering musical for 4 of the years that I was there. So you can see the photo up at top was the show I directed. That was a huge part of my life. I'm very passionate about the show, and you should all go see this year's show. It is happening in April. Little plug right there. I was also a Welcome Week representative. I volunteered for the Engineering One Outreach Office. I was on the committee for organizing the Engineering and Science Olympics, and I was a volunteer for Let's Talk Science. So while I was very much involved in the academics and had to work really, hard from a schoolwork perspective, I was also really, really passionate about my extracurriculars and tried to never be bored and fill my time with as much stuff as I could. While I was at Mac, I decided to take kind of my summer to work in the research labs of the different professors. So I was an undergraduate student research assistant for Dr. Heather Sheardown when I was at Mac. At the time, I knew I wanted to go into grad school, so I wasn't really interested in looking at any external co-ops or internship placements in various industries. In hindsight, I probably should have, but I didn't. So, such is life. So while I was in there, while I was working with Dr. Heather Sheardown, I was investigating the use of contact lenses as drug delivery devices to the eye and investigating different polymeric materials and their properties on, how can we use them to optimize drug delivery. So as you can see, there's a lot of bio in my background. This is something I'm really interested in, and not only the more kind of chemical side of chemical engineering, but also the bio and biomedical side. So when I left Mac, I then went to the University of Toronto to get my Master's of Applied Science in Chemical and Biomedical Engineering. I was supervised by Dr. Marissa Sterling, and my research themes were tissue engineering, regenerative medicine, and high throughput drug screening. If any of you are bored and would like to read my thesis, you're more than welcome to. It's online. So I was researching high throughput screening of kinase inhibitor drugs on cardiac function using engineered heart tissue constructs. And if you're confused, I can give you a Reader's Digest version. Basically, what we were looking at was, can we develop 3D heart tissues that mimic the native heart, so the myocardium, and can we use them for drug screening to be used earlier in the drug discovery process? So instead of waiting till you get to clinical trials or animal trials, you would actually have an idea of how these drugs would behave on the heart before you get to the really expensive and time-consuming part of the drug discovery process. So I published my work in academic journals. Again, I was a member of the community theater at U of T and in the Toronto area. And while I was there, I also co-founded the IBBME Discovery Program, which was an outreach program to introduce high school students to modern biomedical engineering and give them some exposure to an area that they might not have be familiar with when they were looking to apply to different university programs. So I think I mentioned it in my bio, but something that I was really, really passionate about was the work that I was doing in my my academic lab. And I thought there's such amazing technology that exists here, and we have all these incredible researchers doing this incredible work, but then it gets written up in someone's thesis and then put on a shelf. There wasn't a lot of connection between the clinic and what's going on in the academic labs. And I thought this is a gap that I would really love to be in to help facilitate that technology going from kind of these academic work all the way into the clinic. So that's what made me want to leave academia and kind of start my career in industry. I didn't want to pursue my PhD at the time. So my first position, I was working at a startup called Hemic Pharmaceuticals. It's now called Amicathera, which is a startup out of Dr. Molly Schreiket's lab. And what we were doing was we were developing hydrogels for the sustained release of analgesics after surgery. So the idea being, after you have, say, a knee replacement or a hip replacement, instead of going on maybe a systemic opioid or painkiller like maybe morphine or taking other things like codeine, instead you would have the painkiller delivered locally to the site of the surgery, and thus you wouldn't have any of the systemic issues that come with widespread opioid use. For any of you who've worked in a startup, you'll know that when you work for a startup, you do a little bit of everything. You're kind of a jack of all trades. So I did a little bit of R&D, manufacturing, regulatory, quality assessments, some business development work. And that was really, really interesting. And I really, wait, is it on present mode? Sorry, I just saw the chat thing. Sorry. Yeah, so if you, I did a little bit of everything. Something I learned when working for a startup was that there was so much that I didn't know. And so after a few months at the startup, I left to go work for Covalon Technologies, which is a medical device company based out of Mississauga. I was a scientist there, and I was looking to develop technologies in the area of infection control, advanced wound care, and medical device coatings. Part of our business model was also to work with external clients to kind of marry our technologies together. So if they had an area, like a technology that they wanted to mix with our medical device coatings, I would be the researcher on those projects. So looking at, making sure we meet their needs as well as our own, and a lot of commercialization of our devices, such as scale up, optimization, looking at the different regulatory requirements, basically going from, hey, marketing has an idea, now how do we make a physical thing? So I learned so much at Covalon. I really appreciated my time there. It was a great learning experience and kind of helping to develop my confidence in myself as a researcher, because I did struggle at times with things like imposter syndrome and stuff like that. So my time there, I really enjoyed my time there, but I started to realize that the actual science that I wanted to do was not in the field of kind of infection control and advanced wound care. What I was really interested in was kind of going back to my roots and looking at tissue engineering and regenerative medicine. So there we go. In May of this past year, I started a position at Blue Rock Therapeutics. So Blue Rock Therapeutics is somewhat of a new company, so I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't heard of them. They are a cell therapy company focused in developing authentic cellular medicines to reverse devastating diseases. We're based out of Toronto, but we also have, sorry, I say we're based out of Toronto. We have 3 main offices in Toronto, New York, and Cambridge. But what we do is we basically have our cell and gene platform that reprograms mature, differentiated cells back into an induced pluripotent cell kind of state, so iPSCs, if you've heard of that term before. And then we apply genetic engineering to those cells to enhance their therapeutic capabilities and then redifferentiate them into new cells. So our main areas of technology is cardiology, neurology, immunology, as well as we've dabbled a bit in ophthalmology. So it's super cool. When I heard that this company actually existed, I thought, oh my gosh, these guys are doing science fiction. I love this. And I was really excited to actually see a company that was doing the work that I was doing in grad school and focus on getting it out to the clinics. So it's very exciting. We started our first clinical trial back in 2021 for Parkinson's treatment, where we've developed stem cells that produce dopamine, and we use them to treat Parkinson's. So that our clinical trial is currently ongoing, and it's very exciting. And at Blue Rock, I am a research associate in the Department of Formulation Development. So what we do is we develop the actual formulations that the cells are in when they get implanted into the patient. So in pharmacy terms, you might have heard of the term active pharmaceutical ingredient, or API. So in our case, it's not a small molecule, it's a cell. And now we have to figure out, okay, that's great, but you can't just put a cell into a person. They're living or like organisms essentially, and we have to figure out a way to get them into the patient that keeps them healthy and make sure that they still do the job that they need to do when we're there. So that's the stuff that we do. We develop the actual clinical formulations. We characterize them and test them against the cells, and do a lot of collaboration with the device team that's developing the physical, machine that's putting it into the patient, as well as the assay development team that's developing the assays to test this in vitro, so that we can characterize it from both a quality control standpoint and research standpoint. And I'm also helping to lead some of the tech transfer and commercialization strategies. So it's very exciting. My last 9 months there have been awesome. It's a fantastic company with amazing people, and everyone is super excited about their work they're doing, which it makes me super excited about the work we're doing. So it's been absolutely great. So something that I've really started to notice, having worked for the last 4 years, is that engineers make great researchers. So not only do we have a strong technical background, so if maybe you're not an expert in a specific scientific concept, you pick them up quickly. But I think one of the biggest strengths that we have as engineers, and applied, in this case to research, but really to anything, is our problem solving and critical thinking skills. All I do every day is problem solving. That's literally what they pay me to do. So being able to think outside the box and really evaluate a situation and looking at it from all angles and try to approach it in new ways that haven't been, thought of before, is I think a really good skill to have. The other thing is, we might not know the answer. I'll fully admit I don't have the answer to everything, but we know how to find the answer, and we know kind of how to go about getting those answers, whether it's from literature, whether it's from looking at previous technologies, other experiences, reverse engineering, all that kind of stuff. I think is something that's a really good skill that we have, as well as just an innate curiosity and willingness to learn things that it's that curiosity that drives you to want to get the answer. And something that, at least for me, I found in my experience in engineering is teamwork. I could not have gotten through my undergraduate degree without working with people, whether it's on team projects or kind of having study groups and things like that. And so those skills that I got from working as a team have been invaluable in the industry, because you need to have that ability to not only work with people, but learn how to deal with people from a conflict resolution standpoint. And just, it's a much more pleasant work environment if you have good relationships with the people you work with. There we go. Okay, so these are the lessons that I learned. Hopefully they are helpful to you. And so, obviously, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. So the lessons I learned was, look for opportunities outside of your comfort zone. I'm not going to lie, I was scared of the real world when I was an undergrad, which is part of the reason that it drove me to go to grad school, because I was like, oh, real world, scary. University is safe. But at the end of the day, growth doesn't happen when you feel comfortable. I was scared to apply for the position I have right now. And I'm so glad that I kind of pushed myself to do it because I'm so happy doing what I'm doing. So yeah, even it might scare you, but be confident in yourself. You'll never know what's going to happen if you don't try. I think it's the main message. Be a lifelong learner. It's definitely helped me just kind of get me kind of interested in certain things and given me opportunities because I wanted to learn things that I didn't know before. Grades / school are important, but not everything. I think Fawad said it. One of the other presenters said it. Being well-rounded is super important. Trying new things, doing something outside of your academic work is so helpful. I think I mentioned I did musical. If I hadn't done musical, I would not be the person I am today because I met my partner doing musical. I met my best friends doing musical. They are still people that I stay in touch with today. So absolutely. For those of you interested in grad school, I would recommend trying non-academic co-ops at some point during your undergrad. You might discover something you never knew you enjoyed. And something that I've really hit home to me personally, or at least recently, is nothing in life is permanent. You might say, oh, I'm scared about, making the wrong decision about a job or going back to school or going to do grad school, but really nothing's permanent. So you're not going to make a wrong decision as long as you look at situations and take something from that and learn something about yourself. And I get it, real life is scary, but you can do it. I swear it's not as scary as it seems. And I have confidence in all of you that you're all going to be amazing. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. And I'm happy to answer anything. And that's my dog, by the way, if you're wondering who the pooch in the Eng bandana is. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Jenna, for that amazing presentation. And also thank you to all of our panelists. And now the floor is open for the Q&A. So for any of our attendees, please feel free to use the raise your hand feature on Zoom, and then we can call upon you, or you can just drop your questions in the chat. And feel free to either ask any of our panelists individual questions or just a general question, and then all of them can answer. And we can go in the order that the panelists presented. So first Marissa, then Fuad, and then Michael, and last but not least, Jenna. So yes, the floor is open.
Okay, if we're getting cold feet, I have a question for Michael. How was it dealing with like IP for your startup? Like, was it like a big process? You mentioned it was like pretty interesting for you.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Great question. So yeah, I guess technically, like before you present your invention in like an expo, technically that's like, if you were to do that, that's considered like a public disclosure. So you should first get like a provisional patent, which is like a really like quick kind of fast track patent that you can get for, if you do it yourself. The thing with patents, if you do it all yourself, it's actually really cheap. But the moment like you start speaking with lawyers and like patent agents, that's when the cost kind of goes up a little bit. But yeah, we first got a provisional patent, which was just under, it was like $800, and we're fortunate to get funding from the Forge. So that gives you like a year's protection, and then it gives you time to file like a full patent within that time slot. So then we filed like a full utility patent in like August of that year. And fortunately, like the provisional was like pretty in-depth and comprehensive. So when we did the utility, like we just added like a couple more pictures and designs, and then put that through to the US Patent Office, the Canadian Patent Office, and then there's what's considered like a PCT patent, which is like, it's called like the Patent Corporation Treaty, where there's like 150 countries that all say, okay, yeah, if you have a patent underneath that PCT, then we'll ensure that it's protected in our country, and that gives you about like 3 years as well. So yeah, and we filed a utility, which kind of covers both your design and how it's used, whereas a design patent is specifically just how the product looks. Yeah, thanks for the question.
Thanks for sharing. I didn't know about the PCT. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's the closest thing to like a universal patent, even though like they don't really exist. It's like the closest you can get.
I'll just add something around the whole patent process is if you have inventions through an organization, then you may be named on the patent, but it does stick with the organization. So if you end up moving on, just something that people sort of get familiar with is the fact that you likely might still be named in it, but it does kind of sit with your employer. So
Thank
I
you
see
so
a
much.
question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
yeah, sorry. I was just going to mention the question in the chat, so I'll just read it out. We have a question from Matthew. I've been struggling to get employment during the pandemic, so I filed applications for grad school at McMaster in Guelph. My reasoning is that being unemployed for so long has made my application stale. Recruiters ignore it because they think I've been turned down by others, and getting a master's would increase my marketability. Is that logic sound? So I guess we can have all of our panelists just say their take on this, starting off with Marissa, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Vidashri. And by the way, I really enjoyed hearing everybody's story. So you're phenomenal panelists, by the way. I want to pick up on what Fuad said is, I believe you talked about the fact of, you can't join the dots unless you make the dots, right? And I kind of like what you said there. So, I mean, this is Matthew, just know that so many people are in the same situation as you. I can even share with you that, the year I graduated, there was an economic downturn, and some of my friends did a master's and other people took years to get a job. So this happens in cycles, and I know it's a very unfortunate time, but just know that it's happened to many people before as well. So the one thing I just wanted to say on this is that you're right, it can look poorly on a resume, and or employers may use it as something to weed out when they don't see that history. And so I encourage folks to think about volunteerism as another avenue to build up a resume. You need to obviously do what works for you. So, obviously if your finances don't allow for it, then that is understandable. But realize that there's so many ways to get really valuable experience, and trying to think out of the box with what those are. So for example, depending on your interest level, you could, at the university, you could seek out a faculty member and say, listen, can I just volunteer in your work? Can I just work in your lab? Can I take on a project? Can I do something, in addition, right? And with the community, there's using many opportunities to reach out and do that as well. And in fact, for employers in a certain field, you can always say, depending on the field you're interested in, you could always find out more about that field and see where you might be able to do some volunteer work in that field, which would help you build up that experience. So try to think about what is the kind of universal experience that people are looking for. And this was already mentioned through some of the different folks. I think Genevieve talked about the value of teamwork, for example. So how could you demonstrate, leadership and teamwork and problem solving and understanding the industry that you really want to get into. So knowing that industry, how could you get all those skills in other ways is what I might suggest, while you still obviously beat the bushes and seek to get that job. There's many ways around. And I didn't get into such a fulsome background with myself, but I can say that, I wanted to be on a board of directors, and everyone said, no, you got to be like a senior citizen to do that. So then I kind of figured out other ways around, and I got myself onto a board. I wanted to run for politics, and folks said, oh, you can't do that unless you are from a political family. So instead I found other ways of making connections and did that. So just really try to think outside the box. You can definitely build up a really strong resume in the meantime.
Thank you so much, Marissa. Fuad, would you like to address this?
Yeah, for sure. I think those are all really good points. I don't have too much more to add. I think there's a ton of ways to get experience. And like for me, working on like personal projects was a big one. And that honestly stood out like more than some of my experiences to employers. Like especially if you're in like software engineering, it's very, very easy to like get on a project because there's pretty much zero startup costs. Like you can get like a free membership through GitHub and like get your service hosted for free. So there's a lot of stuff you can build. So I would recommend that. I wouldn't recommend grad school unless you know what you want to get out of it. It's quite expensive and it's like a long time period. So I would really like think about what you might want to get out of grad school and like why you might want to do it. Because honestly, there's a lot of positions that don't require a master's. And I think, yeah, like on the stale point, there are other things you can do than like spending like, like 40K on a degree. So if you want to do a master's, I would really recommend like it's something you want to do and not just something you feel like you have to do because you have no other options. But yeah, excited to hear everyone else's.
Thank you, Fuad. Yeah, that was great advice. Now, Michael.
Sure. Actually, Genevieve, if you want to go first, I know I was chatting about the patents before, so interested to hear your thoughts. I can go after you.
Sure, happy to. Thanks. Yeah, so just kind of to parrot what Marissa and Fawad said, it is kind of tricky when we're kind of in these periods of uncertainty to find a job, and I have so much sympathy because it's not easy, and it is discouraging when you're applying for stuff and then not hearing anything and applying for stuff. But yeah, grad school is definitely a depending on what you want in grad school. So there's research-based masters, there's kind of course-based masters, there's PhD. It's depending on what you want to get out of it. There's different options that you can do. So I think there is a lot of benefit to grad school because you have an amazing networking opportunity, whether it's your fellow students that you're talking with or other professors, or getting the opportunity to go to conferences and stuff. So there are a lot of amazing experiences, but it is a lot of money and a lot of time. And from my experiences, I've actually been turned down for jobs because I've had a master's, because I've been overqualified. So it's really a double-edged sword, where in some cases it looks great because look at you shows that you can commit and you can follow through, and you have this new designation, and those extra letters at the end of your signature is great and everything. But in some cases it's not necessary. So for me, from a research perspective, if you're interested in research-based jobs, almost everyone I work with has a master's, but that's not the case of other industries, and maybe not the case even in research in other industries as well. I'm just talking more from a medical devices standpoint, but not every company might be like that. So yeah, I think I'd be happy if you have questions about grad school in particular, just like feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. But it is definitely it is a great choice if it's something that you're really interested in, and something that you want to do, and if you kind of know, like Fuad said, if you know what you want to get out of it.
Thank you so much, Jenna. Michael, you can feel free to answer.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of great points have been covered already. Yeah, I think definitely like you can always build your own experience at any point in time. And yeah, it's similar to what Fuad had mentioned. Like, it does stand out more because it shows that you've taken like the principles and fundamentals of what you've learned and actually applied it, right? Which is something that is rare, I guess, right? Like creating and innovating and creating something new. So it does help you to stand out. Another good thing to do is like if there's any online expos. I know there's like the amount of like online events have like just skyrocketed because of COVID, and a lot of these expos have like kind of like speed networking sessions at the end where you can like just meet like almost like 100 people in like 20 minutes or something. So like your chances of connecting with someone and just like having that follow-up conversation is a lot higher. So there's a lot of really great conferences, like Collision is coming up, which is a really big tech conference that's normally held in Toronto, I think. So yeah, that's definitely another good avenue. And yeah, there's a lot of companies, even like startups, that are always looking for talent. So even myself, I worked at like a startup very early on, like, and that experience helped me get like the next job. So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of, it's basically a numbers game. So never feel discouraged. Like, you're super smart, you're in like an engineering program, it's, you're very intelligent. So never feel discouraged, right? It's their loss. And yeah, like the world's your oyster. So there's always opportunities. Just keep going.
Thank you so much for the great encouragement. I believe we have someone raising their hand, so please feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, I just wanted to add, I think the panel has a lot of good points. I think that, speaking from someone that, who after getting his undergrad, have a bit of industry experience, and then went on to get my 2 masters and then my PhD. I think I can speak a little bit more on the grad school side a little bit. I think that having additional education is good in terms of improving your critical thinking skills. I think that it's important in helping you to be more well-rounded as an engineer, because understand one thing is that engineers are not just people who are good with math and technical skills. There are a lot of social implications to what we do. So I think that it's important for any engineers, especially in 2022, when we're talking about intersectionality. I think it's important to understand that there are a lot of social implications to what we do. So if you're interested in the business side, then if you can afford it, and the panel put a good point about grad school being expensive. If you have the time, it's not just the money, but also the time as well. Go for an MBA. Why not? It would be good to have that. But also it depends on the industry that you get in, like the panel was talking about. So it would be good to consider grad school as an option if you're having trouble to find jobs. And like what Marissa was saying about volunteerism, it could help you discover new passions. And when you do that, then you discover that, hey, maybe this is something that I want to get into as well. Then, Jennifer put a good point about engineers being good researchers. We know we are not just being good researchers in our own subject matters. As a matter of fact, any subject matter, we are good at being researchers. That's why people hire engineers, because we are good at doing analysis. So I think that don't be afraid to explore the grad school options. But I would also put the panel's advice into consideration. Take all the aspects into consideration before you take the dive. So that's all I wanted to give. So
Thank you so much for your insight. That was amazing. I don't see any questions in the chat, so I actually have a question of my own. I know Marissa and I think all of the other panelists touched upon how engineering, the journey is not always linear, and there's we just talked about being discouraged. So my question is, was there ever a moment in your career journey where you felt like you wanted to change paths or you wanted to quit? And if so, what was it and how did you overcome that?
So I can jump in and hear from the rest of the folks. We've kind of talked a bit about this already from the panel. We've used the word passion, and I would add to it identity. So, when we're all at different stages when we take our undergraduate degree, and in many cases we're super young. And I remember I was like 16, I think, when I started, so I was really young, and so we're learning about ourselves. And so for me, engineering really helped to define who I was. Like, I really loved it, and I took everything in, and it was very positive. And so, right from the beginning, we are the engineers, right? So it really was built into me. My father was an engineer, it was in the family. So I had all these cues to kind of say, okay, that's who I am. I'm an engineer, right? So I got the ring. I don't know if you can see that, but I got the ring. And that ring was like the most, that ring was the most important thing in my life. I rode a bicycle shortly thereafter, and I fell off the bike and I scraped the ring, and I was just like, oh, I was like, this was the end of the world. But of course, you can't see it, but it was very personal to me. And so I went out in the workforce and got out there. I started my work and everything else. And as I moved away from technical work, right, I moved out of the lab, out of manufacturing. As I said, I started to get opportunities to work in sales and marketing and so forth. I wasn't around engineers anymore. And I this identity felt irrelevant. And so I actually removed the ring, because I was like, well, this doesn't mean anything in the scope. No one knows what engineers are. There's no other engineers around me. It doesn't really seem to make any difference right now. So I took the ring off. I didn't have that identity, basically. I moved on through my career. And then at a point, I kind of had a bit of a epiphany where I said, listen, my heart's not in this anymore. I was working for companies that kept getting bought out by other companies, and then their culture kept changing. And Canada was this little small cog in a global wheel, and they kept, minimizing and taking over. And the Canadian folks, they were getting rid of all the time. And I was kind of in this situation. I thought, well, this isn't really, I don't really feel like this is a substantial place that I'm contributing and helping people's lives. And it just didn't seem to resonate for me anymore. And so I actually went back into engineering, and I put the ring back on, and I went back into the field. This is when I started to connect in with the professional engineers, which is the regulatory body, and started to do work in regulation. And then it really made it more clear to me that what I liked about engineering that I don't think I fully understood at the very beginning was the skill set to be able to make a difference in the lives of people in society from our vantage point. Many people can, but this is from our vantage point. And that really mattered to me. Like, I really cared about that. And then I started to explore what are the ways that I can actually affect social change. And then I started to realize that affecting social change was the thing that I actually loved in university. And I tried it out, I did, food banks, and I did all kinds of things. And I didn't think I understood it at the time. But I started to then realize that, yeah, I had the skill set, I could do the technical work, and I had the math and science skills. But at the same time, what was driving me was the social change aspect. And then I started to think about, what that is. And then I've now spent much of my last 5 years or so trying to see how I could help engineering professionally with its identity around the fact that we are folks that have an ability to positively affect social change and negatively affect it, depending on what technology we create and what we do with it. And so what could we be doing? In my case, I'm looking at more from like a policy perspective, but what could we be doing to affect it in a positive way? So I just share that story because I do think it comes down to identity. And the question is, where does engineering fit within your personal identity? And as we explore that, we come in and we come out of it. And potentially other panelists and others here as well might have felt that, or if you feel it in the future, it's okay. But I have this sort of like open perspective where I really feel that everybody with this engineering background can be in this world of engineering, no matter whether you're entrepreneurial or you're out in tech and so forth. You can have that identity of an engineer depending on how you see it. And I would say it's a social change element, it's a social change agent working in a technological way. So hope that helps.
Thank you so much. That was amazing, especially being an undergrad student right now. Hearing that perspective gives me a lot of hope. And to any of the other panelists, please feel free to hop in.
Sorry, you're gonna remind her what the question was again?
Of course, it was just about throughout your engineering career so far, has there ever been a time where you felt like you wanted to change the path or do something else? And then what did you do with that?
Yeah, for sure. I think right now, so I'm doing business school in like a year and a half-ish. And I think what really made me realize is that I had pretty much like a year of software engineering experience, and I'll have another 2 years before I go to business school. And I love being an engineer. I'm really glad I studied it. But I think like just like being more in tune with like what I personally want to get out of my career, I've started realizing that maybe it's not all encompassing of what I want to do. Like, for example, I work from home and I live like a 10-minute drive from my manager, and I've never seen him. And I've worked here for 7 months. And I'm somebody who like really derives like a lot of like energy from working with people in small teams and like being really excited to work in person. And that's just not cutting it for me here at Twitter. And so that and a lot of other factors have kind of made me feel stuck. And over the past few months, I've done a lot of self-reflecting. And I think the biggest advice I have for anyone in that position is just like write about it and like figure out like what you want to do. So I have this like yearly writing exercise where I like sit down with nothing but a piece of paper or like a few pieces of paper and a pencil. Like I shut off everything and I schedule like 4 hours, and I just sit there and like I go through like what my value system is, like who I admire in the world, like am I happy with what I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I try to make that a regular habit, but I have this like 1 yearly event where like it mostly happens because life gets hectic. And I think that's really, really important for just figuring out like what gives you energy and what you want to do. And yeah, I don't know, switch it up after if you realize you don't want to do it. And it can be hard because I think especially like I have a lot of student debt. And so like leaving a good paying job is like hard. Going to grad school is a lot of money. So that's also like kind of scary. But I think at the end of the day, you got to bet on yourself and like have faith that things will work out. And there've been so many instances where like I thought things wouldn't work out. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I'd just fail miserably. And like the worst case scenario isn't actually that bad. So like when I first worked at Tesla, I didn't have a car and I used to bike to the office. And then one day my bike got stolen and I ended up having like Uber to the office, and I didn't get my first paycheck in. So I didn't have enough money to buy another bike. And it was like one of those moments where like, it feels like the world's crashing around you and it feels like you weren't prepared for anything. But like you sit down, you're like, okay, like what can I do? I can like, call a coworker, ask them to drive me tomorrow morning. I can, find a friend. The walk's only an hour. I can honestly make it work. Like things like that. And just picture like the worst case scenario in every scenario and like come to terms with it, and you realize it's actually not that bad. So yeah, if you're stuck, what's the worst case scenario? Like you stay in the position that you are, or like, you know, you don't end up going to grad school, or, you know, you kind of have like an engineering career that you're not super satisfied with. Maybe that's not so bad. And maybe there's like actionable steps you can take to get past that. So yeah, that's, I guess, my advice to that.
That was really inspiring. I think I just got like a surge of energy with your response. Thank
I'm
you.
flattered. Thank you.
Michael or Jenna, if you have anything to add, please feel free to do so.
Sure. Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's funny, like, I think that that practice of sitting down and like writing down what you want to do next, how you're feeling, is like actually really important, because it's so easy to like get into the momentum of the day to day, and then you do need to like take some time. I think like Bill Gates does this as well. Like he takes like think weeks where he just kind of kind of reflects, analyzes what he's been doing previously, and kind of sets a new direction. So for me, in terms of a time where I was, I guess, not necessarily discouraged, but like definitely like really stressed. And I remember I had this lab report due, and I was spending, I kind of left to the last minute, I'm going to be honest. I was juggling so many different things, and I spent like the whole day writing it. And then I submitted it at like, it was due at 11:59, and it submitted, like my computer froze, and then it submitted at 12, and then it said like late, right? Even though it was like 1 minute. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I spent so long on this. And I was just like so stressed in that moment. And then like I kind of had this realization, like, okay, like it's not the end of the world. You know, you kind of have to see beyond where you are now. I think that's like a good skill set to develop, is like seeing beyond the state, or the current state that you're in, and being able to realize that like the important things are like the impact you make, right? This is just one node along the line. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. And I think having that perspective definitely helps you to still be motivated and like excited and resilient. So I think like resiliency is really important. And yeah, I think adopting a positive mindset as well will enable you to kind of go through that. And I think for me, that was a big point in life where I was like, hey, I need to stop being so stressed out about these things, because it's, in the grand scheme, it's not that big of a deal. So yeah, that's my point of feedback there, but definitely some really great and inspiring stories.
Thank you. Yeah, once you talked about that, 11:59, 12, that I think all the students, I think all of us have definitely felt that at least a few times. Thank you. And Jenna, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, everyone's made some amazing points, so I don't want to kind of restate the same thing that's been said, but I think one thing I'm hearing a lot of, and I agree, is kind of this idea of writing stuff down, or I call it career mapping. And it's kind of thinking about like, okay, what kind of stuff do I enjoy, and what would I like to be doing? So it's not necessarily like, I want to be the CEO of X. Like, you can do that if that's what you want, that's great. But it's also just saying like, what do I want to do out of it? So what kind of positions do I need to put myself in to help me achieve that? And that's good to put some perspective on it, because I'm someone who gets really bogged down in the here and now. And I think I mentioned this in my talk of like, nothing's permanent, and I get focused on, I don't like what I'm doing now, I'm never going to succeed, this is awful. And it's easy to get discouraged by that, but to kind of take a step back, take yourself out of the now, and kind of look at it in the big picture is helpful. But I'm also someone who has gone through periods of complete insecurity, of not confidence in myself, and thinking, why am I even in engineering anymore? Screw it, I'm going to go to theater school instead. And you know, obviously that's a great career move. But it's not easy, and you're going to have those moments of insecurity, and that's okay. Like it's not anything wrong with you to feel like that in those moments. But just know that the fact that you're here and you're doing the work, you can do it, and you will get through it. And what you're doing now might not be what you end up doing 10 years from now. And that's also okay. I've had so many friends who got their engineering degree and are now professional chefs. And that's okay. Like, that's what they wanted to do. They got their engineering degree, and then they realized that, they didn't want to work at OPG or Imperial Oil. They wanted to be a chef. So I think the big thing is just taking that time for self-awareness and reflection is so important to kind of know what you want to do and be happy with what you're doing. Because the last thing you want to do is put yourself in a position, because it's like, oh, this looks good on my resume, but you're not happy with what you're doing. You don't get joy in it. You don't get that passion from it. So my 2 cents.
Well, thank you all so much for your insight. It is 7:20, so we do have to move on to the kind of project showcase portion of our event tonight, but I want to thank all of you again for coming out to our Beyond the B.Eng panel showcase. We're so lucky to have all of you here and hear about your careers and learn from your experiences. So I just want to thank you all again for agreeing to present today.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We are going to take a quick 5-minute break and move on to our project showcase. We have 4 teams who are going to be presenting their personal projects, and we have a judge, which we'll introduce when we come back from our break. So yeah, we will see you all in 5 minutes. 7:25, we'll do 4 minutes.
Kira, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good. So am I the only judge?
I believe, I don't know, or Fuad, Michael, Marissa, I know we mentioned you were welcome to stay as judges. Are you guys planning on staying?
I can stay until like about 4:50, or sorry, I'm in PST, but that means 7:50 your time. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, sure. I can stay as well.
Amazing. So yeah, the main criteria we're going to be looking for, I know I've mentioned this to a few of you, but we are looking at, I wrote them down before I forget them. Yeah, so we're going to be looking at creativity, clear description of the project, different technical applications of the project, kind of like the future of it and the different possibilities, as well as presentation skills. So there's no strict like scoring criteria for the presentations, but just kind of, and then email me your top 3 picks for first, second, and third place.
And sorry, so which email do we email for that? Is that the internal affairs one, or?
You can send it to them too. Yeah, if I know
Okay.
they've been mostly in contact with you, and then some of the speakers have been in
Cool.
contact, so that works too.
Perfect.
Thanks so much for joining us, Jenna.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was great. Good luck, everyone. Have a great rest of your night.
Bye. Have a great night.
Bye.
So I'm going to sign off and have a great rest of the event, okay?
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, Marissa. It was great to meet you.
Okay. Yeah. Bye.
Nice meeting you.
Likewise. Bye.
Cheers.
Okay, I think we're good to get started. It's 7:25, so we can stay relatively on schedule, make sure we wrap up by 8 o'clock. So yeah, like I mentioned before, we're doing a project showcase. So we have 4 groups presenting today to talk about some of their personal projects and things that they've been working on, either by themselves or in a team of other students. So we also have, on top of some of our panelists who are staying, we also have another judge who's here with us today, Dr. Gay Yuitung. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. So she's the acting director at the Forge, as well as the executive director of McMaster Industry Liaison Office. So we're super excited to have her here today to judge some of our student projects. So our first project is going to be presented by AJ. I can keep sharing my screen, but if AJ, you're welcome to get started.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me and see me okay?
Yep, you're good.
Fantastic. Awesome. So hello, everyone. My name is Abdul Jawad Karabi. I go by AJ. I'm a second-year engineering physics student here at McMaster. So today I'll be talking to you about Precare, and the team at Precare, we're creating logistics software for unit charge nurses in the emergency department. So if you want to go to the next slide. Awesome. So let me tell you first about Denise. Denise is a unit charge nurse in the ER at North York General Hospital. It's one of the busiest ERs in Canada, and this is a person who we have talked to, we have interacted with, but we've anonymized her name and other data just to make sure that, for anonymity reasons, but this is a real person. I really want to stress this. So if you want to go to the next slide. So as a unit charge nurse, her job is incredibly important. She manages a shift of cohort nurses and also looks at nursing assignments within the emergency department. In addition to that, she also provides patient care and generally plays an extremely important role within the ER as the person who sort of communicates with the hospital and is the voice of the emergency department. The way we like to think of a unit charge nurse is the air traffic controller of the ER. Despite having such immense responsibilities, they don't really have that much support. If you want to go to the next slide, please. The most advanced technology that Denise has is a system called Volsera. And what that does is basically a glorified walkie-talkie system. She has very near zero information about patient flows and nurse flows within the ER. That makes her incredibly important job unnecessarily difficult. And on top of all of that pressure, which is immense, remember, there are lives at stake here. Her average shift is 11 hours. She's underpaid. And during the pandemic, she faced record patient volumes. Remember, at an already at capacity hospital. This is where Precare comes in. If you're going to go to the next slide. Utilizing location data, Precare will present a simple dashboard to the nurse that will showcase to her patient and nurse flows, offering comprehensive support. For example, Precare will provide Denise with live immediate information on incoming patients, their status of current patients, and the status of her nurses. So she is able to she is better able to make more optimized decisions for the ER. By empowering the unit charge nurse, by essentially giving them an operations center for the air traffic controller, the ER as a whole becomes a lot more safer and more reliable. Next slide. So the way we aim to have our business models through an annual subscription model, and if our total addressable market within North America is going to be $350 million with only 20% market penetration, and the service Precare provides is really valuable because the healthcare analytics sector within North America alone is $4 billion. And let me tell you a bit more about our validation. So if you want to go to the next slide, we've been connected with an extensive network of mentors and of nursing champions and of technical champions, and is also of physician mentors at the biomedical zone, which is a DMZ partner at Ryerson University. And this has been incredibly valuable as we have been able to sort of gain a lot more mentorship and be connected very easily to people within the healthcare sector and genuinely bounce off ideas, right, from them if we sort of have a hypothesis or not. More about our validation is actually being able to talk and interact with people in the States, because essentially the healthcare systems The softwares, anyway, between the States and Canada are very similar. We've been able to work with experts in nursing at Burnham and Young Women's Hospital, and which is one of the main Harvard teaching hospitals. It's actually the second biggest Harvard teaching hospital. And we're also working with the advisory team at Charismatic Brands. Charismatic Brands is the brand that provides 60% of nursing scrubs in the United States. These experts have been instrumental in allowing us to create a product that fulfills all of the healthcare data factors and really compliance with privacy issues like HIPAA or PIPETA. So, so this is where we're able to, so next step, sorry. Our next steps are basically to contact hospitals and leverage our pre-existing network and being able to provide a pilot project for our startup. So essentially what this means is that we'd be able to integrate within a hospital, within their EMR, and then test our product on a very soft basis, of course, while ensuring it's a very safe way. Our recognition that we've had so far is we've actually won the fall 2021 Concept 5K pitch. And this was a very, very proud moment for the team. And we've also already partnered with multiple department heads at several hospitals in the GTA, from which we wish to find a pilot project like we've mentioned earlier. Finally, let me just tell you a bit about the team. So we're all three co-founders, and one of the co-founders is Ahmed, and he's a health science student at Waterloo, who previously worked at Point Click Care, which is one of the biggest healthcare analytics companies at Canada, and he's a student at Waterloo, as I mentioned. The other student that we have working on this is myself. And as you can see here, I'm very passionate about the healthcare space. I'm working with the Cleveland Clinic on a project. It's been very, very fascinating. So this was definitely something that I was more than happy to participate in, and this is definitely tied to my interests. And the last person is this wonderful little guy called Dylan. He's actually very tall. I don't know why I said little, and he has extensive research experience. So as you can see, we have very much a sort of like a business side, a technical side, and a research side from Dylan, who's able usually to provide us with a lot of valuable research regarding the sort of best practices within emergency departments and the best ways to overhaul emergency department, which is very important stuff for our startup. So that's it for Procare. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, AJ. That was wonderful. Okay, so next up we have Ben, who's going to be presenting his project. Ben, you're welcome to share your screen, or I also have your slides here as well, so I can present them. I can't hear you. I don't know if anyone else has that same problem.
Yeah, I also can't hear you, Ben.
There you go. There you go. Can you hear me? Oh, wait, no.
Try changing your audio settings. Maybe your mic is the wrong one.
Hello?
Yeah, you're good.
Good to go? All right. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen real quick just because I added one slide about all the technologies that were used, and I think I don't really have time to go through all of them. So this will be good. Okay, cool. Awesome. Can you guys see my screen? Awesome. So hi, everybody. My name is Ben Sun, and I'm super excited to present my project, Zoomer. So Zoomer was created in just under 36 hours at a hackathon for the HSBC Investment Banking Challenge, which we ended up winning first place, which is really cool. And the challenge was to create a financial solution that was targeted specifically to Generation Z people. So what's special about Generation Z people? Well, speaking from personal experience, we love convenience and instant gratification. Even now, I'm sure there's a lot of us that can't be bothered to check out our investment portfolios just because we would need to log in by email verification on our phone apps and then navigate like 4 different pages. And it's just a lot of work, and we're kind of lazy. But anyways, that's why we created Zoomer and why it's such a great option for us specifically. It's super easy to use. It can provide tons of information super easily, and has a lot of unique features that normally aren't available unless you pay for them, such as creating notifications about price changes when they happen for specific stocks. So some of the pillars that we wanted to address with Zoomer was that we wanted to make this sort of information accessible for everybody. For starters, investment information should be readily available anywhere with no ulterior motives behind them. I'm talking the Motley Fool when it gives you that article about the top 10 stocks of the month, but 5 of those stocks have actually paid to be there. We don't want any of that, right? Furthermore, Gen Z students are mostly students who don't all have access to a $50,000 starting portfolio. So we aim to rid that notion of you need lots of money to get started in the first place. And while Zoomer provides so many great features for veteran investors who would want to take advantage of price notifications or real-time indicator information, we also aim to help guide beginners by providing a whole bunch of different educational resources for them instantly. It's my hope that everybody begins investing at a really early age to set ourselves up for the future. So how does it work? Well, all you got to do is text this number using your built-in SMS. You don't need any Wi-Fi. You don't need to download any apps. You certainly don't need to go on your computer and log into any website. It's that easy. Of course, this being built in a hackathon, we use some free trial stuff. So you won't actually be able to text this number right now just because we'd have to verify it. But I have prepared a short clip to demonstrate how it works. So this right now is just my default like messenger text app that comes pre-installed. And I'm just going to say, hey, Zoomer, how's it going? And Zoomer is able to reply instantly and just say, oh, I don't actually recognize this number. And this is kind of like the registration process of how it recognizes you. So it's able to do this using our powerful natural language processing background. So it utilizes the power of machine learning to be able to recognize exactly what you're asking for. So let's say I want to know what the current price of Apple Incorporated is. So you can see there, it gives me the current price, what it opened at in the morning, and what high it reached that day. So I'm going to ask the same question now, but take out a few words, don't include the full name, take out some punctuation. And you can see it can recognize that exact same question, no problem. So now I'm going to try out the notification feature. And I want to set the price of Apple to what it is right now. So $157.44. So at the time of filming this, the market is actually closed. So I know the price won't change. So I'm just going to do this just to show that it actually works. So as you can see that my notification has been set. And then after some mere moments, I'm notified instantly that my stock has actually hit the price that I want it to hit. So that way I don't miss that opportunity to buy at a good time. So now if I want to find out some information about a specific company, so in this case, Tesla, I can see I get tons of information, what currency it uses, which exchanges it's a part of. You even get the logo, which I accidentally downloaded here. And then you can also access their website to see any of their past financial reports and also any new products that they're coming out with to see if they're worth investing in. So now I'm just going to circle back to that notification feature where I'm just going to set the price of Apple again. But this time I'm just going to prove that it's not just preset that I just type something in and it just instantly responds with that. I'm going to set a notification for a price point that is basically impossible to hit. So that way it proves that it's just not just like a, oh, string equals this, return a statement sort of thing. So I'm going to set over $12,000, which obviously will never hit. And as you can see, if we give it a few seconds, it's not going to return any sort of notification that the price point's been hit. And now this will just be constantly polling until that data is retrieved that the price has hit that point. So all of this information is obtained in real time using various financial APIs that are constantly refreshing every 15 minutes. Oops, sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry, I don't know why I just suddenly stopped sharing, but just go back. So these are just some of the technologies that were used in building Zoomer. I'm not going to go through all of them just because it's very technical, but I'll help answer any questions that anybody has any. And yeah, overall, there were a lot of other features that I didn't get a chance to actually show in the video just because of how short this presentation needs to be, such as maybe retrieving investment educational resources or monthly highs, 7-day highs, etc. But I'd be happy to elaborate on them a little bit more. I hope you see the value in providing this super convenient and super quick method of investing and the value of getting our generation to start while we're at such a young age. And as we like to say, Zoomer is the technology for Zoomers by Zoomers. So thank you for listening.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ben. That was great. Okay, next up, we have E-codes by some of our other hosts. So you guys are welcome to, am I good to just keep my screen shared? Or okay, perfect.
Oh, Kira, are you sharing your screen?
Or I'm doing it right now.
Okay.
Okay.
No worries.
There we go.
Thanks. All right, cool. So before we get started, in terms of presenting our app eCodes, we just want to start off by introducing both of ourselves. So my name is Vaishnavi. I'm currently in my second year of software engineering and management here at McMaster, and I'll pass it over to Kenny.
Hi, my name is Kemi. I'm in electrical engineering. I'm in second year.
So in terms of eCodes, so eCodes was actually developed in the most recent round of Delta hacks, and we actually placed for the best environmental hack, which is something we were very excited about. But just our little slogan here is saving the planet one eco at a time. But if we go to the next slide. So we kind of thought about during Delta hacks, what sort of problem we want to attack, what we want to change in the world. And we kind of came about the problem that we wanted individuals to be more eco-conscious as a whole and more eco-friendly as a whole. And we did a lot of research. So if we go to the next slide, just a few facts for all of you. There's about 500 billion plastic cups used worldwide each year, 4.2 metric tons of carbon dioxide emitted per car annually, as well as 5 tons of plastic bags used worldwide each year. So with all of that, we wanted to come up with a solution. So with that, going to the next slide, we came up with eCodes. So what is eCodes? So going to the next slide, sorry. Introducing eCodes. So eCodes is essentially an eco-friendly app that essentially incentivizes individuals to become more eco-friendly and more eco-conscious as a whole through the use of a rewards point system. So we'll be going to more depth about what the reward system is and how it actually works later on in the slides, but just a few features that are consistent in this app. We have a text bot as well as QR codes, as well as point records. So in terms of our eCodes locations on the next slide, we have a few eCodes locations set up around a variety of spots. So in terms of transportation, in terms of bringing your own cup or straw, zero waste groceries, thrift stores, restaurants, as well as clothing locations. And just to give an example, let's say, for instance, you're on your way to Starbucks and you bought your own cup or straw instead of purchasing a straw. There would be like a little QR code at the kiosk, and this would be in partnership with the actual companies. And if you get that scan, you'll redeem certain amount of points and you'll be able to get certain awards such as discounts and such. But as I said, we'll be going into more depth about that in the next few slides. So I'll pass it over to Kemi.
All right, so here is an example of what our QR codes would look like. These would be what you would find these at this various locations that are partnered with the app. So here's the BYOB, BYOC, and C and S, basically bring your own cup and straw, eCodes. And basically you can scan the QR code and you will receive the points that are associated for it, as well as a 10-tree eCode as well. If you ever partner with a sustainable business, you can also receive points for that as well. So to the next slide. So here's what the rewards point system will actually look like. So if you earn a certain amount of points, you can actually earn a reward, whether it's a discount or a coupon by a participating company. We would like to work with more sustainable companies. So you could have a sustainable restaurant or a clothing store or even a grocery store that wants to basically promote eco-conscious practices. On to the next slide. So now we're going to demonstrate our demo. On the next slide, we have a video of how it will work. So basically, the user can log into their eCodes account. Basically, we use React Native to create the app, as well as other features such as Python, Twilio, which was provided to us by the hackathon. When you log in, you can see your profile page as well as your main page where you can open up your camera. And once you do, you can scan the QR code and it'll give you an alert for whenever you receive a certain amount of points. Once you've done that, you can go over to your rewards page and then claim those points basically, and it will update each time you do so. And then on top of that, we also have the text function that Vaishnavi was talking about, where you could get reminders if the weather's not going too good that day. It can provide you alternative ways to be eco-conscious, so like taking the bus or carpooling with someone, for example. On to the next slide. And here are future steps for the app. We wanted to incorporate location tracking. So basically, if you're near an eCodes location or a QR code, we want people to give people the opportunity to, I guess, get rewards for every time they are being eco-conscious. So if you bring a reusable bag in your nearby grocery store, you can definitely go by and get it. And the location tracking will give you that kind of information, as well as carpooling. We want to be able to sync with other users. So if you do carpool, you can all get on and earn reward points together. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We'll go on to our last presentation, which is by Sheridan, and talk about Interview Buddy. Sheridan, would you like me to use my slides, or would you want to share your own screen?
Yeah, can you share your screen?
Yeah, sounds good.
Do you mind also spotlighting Shar Kai in the chat as well? She's also here to present with me.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Shar, and I'm here with my groupmate Sheridan. We're both in our third year of iBiomed, and we'll be presenting Interview Buddy on the behalf of our team. So as co-op students, we have firsthand understanding of how nerve-wracking interviews can be, and that's why we designed Interview Buddy. Interview Buddy is a free and reliable virtual interview assistant trained to notice the small details that matter. So our goal with Interview Buddy is to provide valuable feedback to students and young professionals so that they can build confidence and ace their next interview. From coding to finance to situational and behavioral questions, Buddy has a large repertoire of relevant interview questions in different categories. Practicing with these questions allows Buddy to provide constructive criticism on 3 levels of analysis. Given this opportunity to practice and incorporate valuable feedback at any time, Buddy is always here for you, ready to help you build confidence and push for success.
So once you're on your website, you can answer the interview prompt. Your recording is then analyzed 3 different ways: through video, speech, and content analysis. Video analysis was done through computer vision. This is where we evaluate an individual's focus. So we were checking to see if the person was looking at the camera versus off screen to see if they were distracted. Next is speech analysis. This was done by converting the MP4 file to a WAV file, which was then input into an open source library that evaluated speech characteristics. Specifically, it looked at articulation speed, pronunciation, pauses, and the overall mood of the sample. Next was content analysis. Finally, the .wav file was transformed into text transcript using Google Cloud Speech API. We then compared the transcript to employer-approved answers to the provided interview questions using cosine similarities to compare how much the provided sample aligned with approved expert answers. So this is how it was built. Our front end was built using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So it was a website. We also used Bootstrap to help us rapidly prototype this project. And we used Media Capture and Streams API. The backend was built in Python in combination with open source libraries and also using Google Cloud Speech API. And next, we'll just have our demo video of how it works.
Wait, can you hear the audio from my computer when I played that?
No.
Okay, if I unmute.
We have our website
Can you hear it now?
open from which you can begin the interview process. You're able to select a specific deck of questions to use depending on the interview type, anywhere from general to technical questions. Then, after consenting to audio and video recording, you're given your question. Start the camera and load the question. Once recording, take as long as necessary to answer the question. Once the recording stops and is submitted, the video files pass from our webpage through a post request to our backend. And as we can see here, the video has been saved to one of our directories.
Now, let's take a peek into the backend. What happens when we receive this video? Well, the 3 analyses that we discussed in our flowchart earlier will be conducted. The first, a speech analysis. How is your speech? Are you clear? Are you pausing? The second, how is your response? Do your words align with what experts validate as top words for that question? And finally, a visual analysis. How are you focusing on the camera? And how are you engaging with your surroundings? Then, once all these are processed, you can go to the results page to review your results as a client. You'll get 3 scores and 3 feedbacks. Each score represents how you did for that metric. And depending on your score, you will get individualized feedback with tangible ways to improve. For example, we did poorly in focus and content and audio, all below 50%, but we know what we can do to improve. For example, in focusing, we had poor focus. We can spend more time looking at the camera and avoid engaging with the surroundings. In terms of content, we can use some more buzzwords that really help bring our response to life, such as the word enthusiastic. And finally, in terms of audio, we can improve our pace and we can speak a little bit clearer. Thank you for engaging with our demo. We hope that we can help you ace your next interview.
Welcome to our demo. We currently have our website.
And thank you so much for listening to Interview Buddy.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It was a great presentation. Okay, and yeah, that is all of our presentations today. Thank you everyone so much for attending our event. We really appreciate you all being here. Whether you're here for the panel event, you're here just for the project showcase, we appreciate your participation and helping us celebrate National Engineering Month. Just wanted to thank all of the partners who are helping out with the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers National Engineering Month as a whole. So I want to give a shout out to all of them. If any other hosts have any other thoughts and things they want to say before we wrap up. Okay, if not, then that is everything. So thank you guys all so much for being here. We had a lot of fun.
Great, thanks again.